Yeah.
So it's not like they could just cut the tumor out and it would be gone. This was throughout my body. It was kind of a shock to the brain.
Yeah, that's the shock and denial we talk about, which is probably why you were kind of like, still taking this information in. This is pretty huge. Like, I'm sure you've lost someone close to you to death. It's that way where you take it in a little bit at a time. Your brain cannot take it all in at the same time.
Yeah, it was just a little much.
How would you say Trina cope with it? How did you guys cope together? Still coping, actually.
Well, we talked about it and we speak about it openly. We don't hide emotional responses from each other. We're very open with each other. Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time together. Even more so in this past year, obviously, as we've been most of the time isolated together.
Well, yes, Italy has definitely responded to this.
The reason that our marriage works so well is because I'm married to my best friend. Mm-hmm. It doesn't bother us at all to sit for hours together talking. We never get tired of chatting with each other. We enjoy each other's company. So we've discussed theoretical things and real things and stuff we read, and we just lay it all out there.
You guys have what everybody desires to have.
We have a beautiful marriage.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Definitely a blessing. So open communication, which is what you guys already did. But these things can test that, and it sounds like you guys are withstanding and doing pretty well with this test.
We've done great over the course of this year. I mean, neither one of us is happy with it. We were discussing just last night the fact that we both so much miss going out and socializing with our friends and having dinner in a restaurant. And
yes.
We were, in large part before this, homebodies anyway. We were rarely out more than once a week, not out in a restaurant more than about once a month, but we miss being able to do that.
Oh, you guys thrive on it. I mean, I always knew that Wednesday nights at the hotel outside by the pool, I could hear Ike's voice, and I became quite accustomed to it. In fact, that's what told me what day of the week it was on the crazy weeks.
I think that for me has probably been the most difficult thing, even more so than the restaurant dinners that I love.
Yes,
is getting together with my guys on Wednesday.
Absolutely, guys' night it was great. Made me feel like I was at home, actually, to hear the voices and stuff out there, having a good time, So, would you be comfortable with filling us in on some details once you got the cancer type and prognosis back? Where did it go from there for you?
Then it goes into the bureaucratic nightmare. The U.S. Navy doesn't have any oncology facilities at their hospital here in Naples.
No, they do not.
And they do have very good liaison facilities so that they can connect you with who you need to see out in town. It's a little bit different situation for me as a contractor, because for the government employees in the active duty military here, they simply make an appointment for you with somebody out in town, and that's who you go see, and they're contracted with the Navy hospital, and the Navy pays for the care and whatnot. Okay. For me, I go see anybody I want because it's being paid for by my employee, my group health insurance.
Okay, much like my situation here in Bahrain.
So they make recommendations.
But you can choose.
They will, if I choose, they'll make the appointments for me. But they just give me the referral and say, you need to see an oncologist. Go find an oncologist. Here's who we would use. So I did some research on the oncology facilities here in the area. I wound up settling on the Pascale Tumor Institute, which is part of their national oncology program.
Okay.
And the Navy hospital told me that is who they would
good to know after the fact, huh?
Sure. And then the Naples syndrome kicks in. And
Yes.
then it's trying to get an appointment and waiting and waiting and waiting. Luckily for me, I'm not dealing with the language barrier difficulties that many people would have. I'm quite fluent in Italian.
I was about to say that is a huge difference. I know, like here in Bahrain, the primary language is English, and so we don't have those difficulties. But I very much had it there in Naples and learned what I could within a year, but I couldn't learn much. You're definitely fully fluent. For those who have never been or don't really know Naples, what was that like for you when you say the Naples, did you call it the syndrome?
Yeah, the Naples syndrome.
Yes.
There is a running joke with the Americans who wind up living over here. The domani dopo domani. The Neapolitans aren't in a hurry about anything.
Anything.
And domani means tomorrow. Dopo domani means the day after tomorrow.
Yes.
So, I need this right now. And they're like, relax, domani, dopo domani.
Domani. They get in the hurry to get home by the time to make sure the pasta is fresh for dinner time.
They're in a hurry to get to the table. That's about it.
Yes. I've never seen, and this is no way a criticism because it's beautiful, right? But the fact that nothing is a hurry, they're not really motivated by money that I can tell. Because
no, not so much. Although, maybe not so much today. Things have modernized and westernized. But in the old days, here in the 80s and 90s, you could pretty much bribe your way into anything. You could bribe your way through the bureaucracy.
yes.
I could have probably gotten an appointment with a doctor in a couple of days just by slipping a receptionist a 20.
That's
that doesn't
true.
work anymore.
That's true, right? But in the middle of the day, sorry, we're closed. You know, your emergency does not equal their emergency, which could be quite inconvenient sometimes. So, okay, so you found your location. Thank goodness, fully fluent, so you didn't have that battle.
And yet it took me almost 6 weeks to actually get face-to-face with a doctor at the Cancer Institute.
6 weeks. So we're looking at 3 weeks to find out what, and then 6 more weeks. So that's basically 3 months just to get in front of a doctor after finding out that you have this diagnosis.
Very, very frightening thing going on in my body.
Ike, how did you cope with this?
About it as I was.
Yeah. So how did you cope with this? You know, I am a therapist by trade, so emotionally, how did you cope with this?
Well, I kept in touch with my doctor at the Navy Hospital, and I have to give him a lot of credit.
Great.
He gave me his direct email address, and he and I traded a number of emails, and both of them actually, the ENT and my general practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And they both assured me that my situation wasn't an emergency, that being delayed in a month or two of starting the treatment wasn't going to make a huge difference. This wasn't something that was going to rapidly spread and get worse and blah, blah, blah.
Thank goodness.
And yes, not that was easy news to accept. I've got this diagnosis. Let's get something done about it. That's
right.
Where I was. But we were locked down.
That made it even more difficult. Yes.
Exactly. It made it more difficult because I wasn't able to keep busy. I wasn't able to bury myself in my work. By this time, the contagion had spread to the point where we were starting to see cases on base, and my bosses decided that we were going to telework to the maximum extent possible.
Which was a blessing, I would imagine, in some ways.
It probably wound up being for me, especially as I progressed into the treatment. But at that point, we went to 2 days on site, 3 days telework per week.
Beautiful.
So I wasn't nearly as busy, able to keep my mind occupied with other things as I would like to have been. I was sitting here staring at my computer screen 8 hours a day.
My gosh.
It did give me the opportunity to do a lot of research, but by that point, I already knew pretty much what I needed to know about this disease.
I bet you did. I bet you could probably stand toe-to-toe with the doc even.
I did a lot of reading, that's for sure.
Okay, so you get in front of the doctor, finally. 3 months passed. And how did that go?
Provide them with all the information I had from the American facilities, all the testing that had already been done.
Okay.
He schedules me for some further testing for them, and of course all that stuff has to go to the lab for their docs to verify what the Americans have done. They want to test me now to see has anything progressed in the intervening time. So from the sore throat starting out in March, going through the American hospital, then into the Italian hospital, all the testing, waiting on results to get back, then waiting on a bed to open up in their limited facility for me to actually start chemotherapy.
Wow.
I had my first chemo session in September.
Which was 6 months after diagnosis.
Yeah, from first symptoms in March.
Wow. That's intense.
It was.
And I think in America, I couldn't speak intelligently to it, but I think in U.S., the chemo doesn't necessarily have to be on site.
For me, it kind of did.
Okay.
Because of my existing pathology, I have 2 coronary artery stents.
Got it.
And the chemo regimen that is the best and most aggressive treatment for this type of cancer involves one drug that is designated as cardiotoxic.
Well, that's not good news.
Yeah, my chemo wasn't done. It's actually 6 different drugs, and for most people, they do it on an outpatient basis. They go in the morning. It takes about an hour to intravenously administer each of these 6 drugs. So you go in the morning and you're home for supper.
Wow.
For me, instead, I had to be admitted to the hospital. They would give me 5 of the drugs. Then they would give me a full day of saline IVs to flood that stuff out of my system.
Okay.
Then they would give me the more dangerous of the drugs on a 24-hour slow drip with cardio monitoring, followed by several days of saline flush. As soon as they unhooked me from that drug after 24 hours, they would come and hang a 3-liter bag of saline on my IV.
So the idea is to put it in your system to do its work, but to get it out of your system as soon as possible?
Correct.
Okay. Wow. Didn't want that stuff setting up camp in there.
Exactly. And because it's a toxic effect, but it's very effective at slowing and killing rapidly dividing cells.
Okay.
Which is how it attacks cancer and why it makes your hair fall out.
Yes. Kills everything.
Yep.
I noticed...
So for these 2 of my 6 chemo treatments, I had to be 9 days in the hospital.
Okay, so you had a total of 6. And you said 2 of those was 9 days in the hospital?
Yes, and the rest of them were 3 days.
Wow. Wow. You probably don't remember what American hospitals are necessarily like, but what are the main differences that you know? Although this is a very nice clinic.
It is a nice clinic, but it's in an old facility.
Uh-huh.
We're used to everything being modern and clean and shiny in American hospitals.
Incredibly organized.